Hello there. So I've just stripped down my vintage Hohner alto melodica. This is actually one I believe from the 1960s. Could actually be very late 50s, but got no way of knowing that because they don't have serial numbers of them. Anyway, I've stripped it down because there's a problem with it, and I thought you might like to see what they look like inside. Now, yeah, it's quite easy to take apart. These were designed in the 1950s, so they don't hide screws like they do nowadays. So, what you see is what you get with something that was designed in the 50s. I have got a vintage soprano here as well that you can see. And essentially, to get to the reed plate, the brass reed plate, I've actually coated this one in Coca-Cola as well because it was ever so dirty when I got it out. I mean, there's still a fair bit of muck on there, but I certainly don't want to be scrubbing because it would be very easy to damage a reed, and they're not that easy to replace. So, you don't want to be scrubbing it. So I just gave mine a Coke bath. It's much cleaner now than it was yesterday. Anyway, yeah, very easy to get into. I mean, if we look at this vintage soprano, there's lots of screws in the bottom. Essentially, if you take the bottom off, you'll see the reed plate. So the reed plate actually dropped a piece, but that doesn't matter. The reed plate is actually like this when you take the bottom off. Yeah, that's what you see. So to tune it, you only need to take the bottom off. They're very easy to tune as well. I mean, essentially all you really need to do, if you do want to tune it, if you want to make a note a little bit sharper, all you really need to do is file a little bit off the tip. You just scrape here if you want to make a note flatter. Now, I'm not going to tune this yet until I've actually fixed the problem with it. Because yes, it was actually leaking an awful lot of air, so wasn't really playable, which is why I've stripped it down. I mean, interestingly, if you look at the inside here as well of the bottom plate, I mean, essentially this is where we're blowing into, and we're actually blowing into the back of this plate that's glued in, and the air's getting into the reed plate from this hole here. Yeah, so that's kind of like two pieces of metal that have created a cavity. I did manage to get it off as well without damaging the gasket at all. Didn't particularly want to come off the bottom, but what I do, I get an old plastic card. I kind of find one bit where I can just about prise it open, and I use a card to go around it to get it off. Kind of thing, doing this type of action to release it, and yeah, I did manage to get it off without breaking the gasket. That's literally a cardboard gasket though, so it would be very easy to make another one if you were to damage it. Anyway, yeah, very interesting. I'll just show you what the problem was with this. I mean, you could feel it. I only just bought this on eBay, and whilst it looks fantastic, it wasn't really playable. So yeah, you can see where the air comes in to the reed plate and actually vibrates the reeds, and how the chambers get much bigger as the notes get lower as well. Now, so let me just turn this over. I'll take the mouthpiece away because yeah, I have completely disassembled it. I mean, essentially, so the alto is made of two pieces of wood that will have been glued and clamped together back in the 1960s. There's the insides there, and again you can see obviously the chamber's getting much smaller as you get the higher notes, and there's the inside of the other piece. there. Now, I mean, essentially what had happened to this melodica, that would have been glued and clamped together, I guess, in the 1960s, early 1960s, I would think. And what's actually happened, the glue has failed on it. So the pieces have come apart. So what was actually happening, these chambers where the glue had failed and there was now a gap between the wood, air was being let into chambers when A, notes weren't being pressed, air would just get in anyway, and B, when you were pressing another note, you were still letting air into other chambers as well. And you can actually see here as well where someone's actually done a bit of a repair job in the past. They've obviously realised that they had a problem with it, but rather than disassemble it, what they've actually done, oh, I don't know whether you can see, but they have, I'll move around a little bit. Oh, still can't see. My shadow's getting in the way all the time. Essentially what they've done though, they've squirted some glue in there and packed it. They could obviously feel the air coming out at the sides. Okay, now if you're letting too much air out, it also means you're going to have to blow really, really hard. Now it would have solved that problem of not having to blow so hard, because there wouldn't have been so much air leaking out from the sides, but it wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't have stopped air getting into chambers that it shouldn't do, because all you're doing there, you're just emphasizing that gap. So yes, it's not actually been repaired very well in the past, but someone has had a go at it, and you can actually see as well where they've kind of done it and then repainted as well. So essentially all I'm going to do, now that I've got it apart, I mean, there were a couple of dowels in here as well, so as that the two line up absolutely perfectly when you glue them together. So there were a couple of dowels in there. I mean, it all came apart very easily because that glue was 60 years old, approximately. It had failed. I mean, even the mouthpiece is all glued on, as you can see, but it all came apart ever so easily. I was just really careful right at the end, where I could see it was doweled together, because you can actually see the dowels from both sides as well. You've got holes both sides where the dowels are. You know, I could see that there was dowel there, so I was very careful prizing it apart at the end, but yeah, I was surprised at how easily it did come apart. But essentially all I will do, I'll clean this repair off, make both pieces as flat. Now I don't want to be sanding away too much, because obviously I don't want to change the size of any of these chambers, but I will just make sure both pieces are perfectly flat. Here's the piece I dropped on the floor. See, that just goes in there. Don't really, I mean, there's no real requirement for that piece, but it makes it look like there's a nice joint in the bottom, even though there isn't really. It does make it look like there's a nice joint in the bottom. Don't really know, has no real benefit. Yeah, but all I will do is clean it all up, get it as flat as possible without sanding it too much. I will put some nice fresh glue and clamp it back down again. These felt pads are going to have to come off as well before I do that, so I just need to do that yet. They're stuck down. The felt pads are there so as that the keys don't click. We've got a key here, look, and when you press down on them, the felt's there to stop it clicking against the wood. These go on here as well, for the keys to actually pivot on, and there's a little spring. That's going to be a real pain to put back together. I shall take these felt bits off with a valeting knife. I shall just get a very fine blade under there and bring those off slowly as well. Again, I'm sure the glue isn't going to be very good at all that's under there. They're kind of loose already, really. So yeah, I need to do that, and we shall be well on the way to having a wonderfully working melodica again. Yep, my video seemed to stop there. Don't know why, but anyway, yeah, I've been organised later. I've just put all my little screws in containers. This is everything that was on the outside of the melodica and everything that was holding the reed plate in place. In there we've got everything that was to do with the keys, essentially. The other thing I will just say, if you can see, there's loads of holes in this reed plate. Loads. Each one of these holes is a fixing, because again, the plate needs to sit perfectly flat on the bottom, because if it doesn't, again, you're going to be letting air between the plate and these chambers. So yeah, you need to be extremely careful if you are going to strip one down when you're getting the reed plate off. That's where the money is. If you break that, you're in trouble. Thank you very much for watching. Now you know what the inside of your vintage Hohner melodica looks like.